The Mishnah in Pirkei Avot gives as the example of a dispute that is not for the sake of heaven to be the dispute of Korach and his assembly, meaning Korach's dispute with Moshe was not for the sake of heaven. What made his dispute not for the sake of heaven? Some say it was because it was a one-sided argument. Korach unjustly attacked Moshe. Others offer that it was for personal gain or interest. Korach wanted to depose Moshe and Aaron and replace them with himself. Still others offer up other reasons. Regardless, there are a few someones missing from Chazal's list. In this week's Parsha Korach, the Torah tells us that in addition to Korach's dispute with Moshe, Datan and Aviram also had a bone to pick with Moshe. So they joined forces together with Korach to jointly lead a protest movement against Moshe's leadership. If the Torah essentially equated the leadership of Datan and Aviram with that of Korach, why then, when giving an example of a dispute not for the sake of heaven, the Chazal mention only Korach and not also Datan and Aviram? The simple answer would be Chazal was looking for the main leader and instigator of the dispute. True, Datan and Aviram were important members of the tribe of Reuven, possibly even in leadership roles. However, it seems to be pretty clear from the text that it was Korach who was able to get the dispute off the ground. Not only was Korach from the tribe of Levi, the tribe that served in the Mishkan and a semi-royal tribe even while in Egypt, but he was also one of the tribe's most important people. It must then be that it was Korach's stature that gave the dispute legitimacy, while it was Datan and Aviram who hitched a ride on Korach's bandwagon of discontent. Hence, it would make more sense to include Datan and Aviram as part of Korach's assembly, rather than single them out as leaders. The argument against this idea, though, is that the Torah tells us that Moshe directly addressed Datan and Aviram as leaders of the dispute in the same way as he directly addressed Korach. Moshe sent messages both to Korach and to Datan and Aviram with an offer to resolve the dispute. In other words, Moshe himself equated their leadership with one another. As such, there must be another reason why Chazal mentioned only Korach. Perhaps the reason why Chazal omitted Datan and Aviram's name from their example of a dispute that is not for the sake of heaven was to draw attention to the fact that the dispute of Korach and the dispute of Datan and Aviram were actually two very different types of disputes. Korach's dispute with Moshe stems from the fact that he was upset and jealous of Moshe and Aaron. As previously pointed out, Korach was one of the top and most distinguished people of the tribe of Levi. Yet, he had been passed over for a leadership position that he felt he had rightly deserved. He possibly had a point and a valid complaint, yet that did not justify organizing a rebellion under false pretenses in protest of Moshe's leadership. Datan and Aviram, on the other hand, weren't protesting because of feeling slighted. Just listen to the malice dripping off their answer to Moshe's summons. For whatever reason, they plainly hated Moshe and wanted to get rid of him. So by leaving Datan and Aviram off the list, Chazal was trying to teach us an important lesson. Disputes not for the sake of heaven can come in two types. One type was Datan and Aviram's dispute, which was based on hate. That clearly is not for the sake of heaven, so there is no reason even to mention it or think otherwise. On the other hand, by Korach, it was not clear. He did not say that his motivations were personal, but rather to defend the people. He had raised up some important and valid issues. His arguments had merit. Chazal taught, however, that underneath those pious platitudes, Korach was using it to advance his own agenda. Rather than acting for the sake of heaven, he was acting for his own, by specifically mentioning only that which needed to be mentioned and not mentioning that which did not. Chazal was teaching that even something masquerading as righteousness does not make it acting for the sake of heaven. Chazal was warning that it takes more than words to show true acting for the sake of heaven, and we must be very careful not to get confused by a show of charades. Shabbat Shalom.